Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here with us because today we're taking a really focused, deep dive into a super fascinating training module. It's called Mastering the Art of Constructive Feedback Reception. Now, if you've ever completely tensed up during a performance review or maybe felt your heart rate just absolutely spike when a colleague says those dreaded words, "Hey, can I give you some feedback?" Well, then this Explainer is exactly what you need. We're going to unpack the specific language and strategies from the source material and show you exactly how to take back control in those highly stressful moments. But before we get into the actual mechanics of it all, I want you to reflect on this for a second. Really think about it. How do you handle negative feedback? Be totally honest with yourself here. When someone points out a flaw in your work, does your stomach just completely drop? Does your brain instantly initiate this full-on fight or flight panic mode, kind of like a gazelle being chased by a lion? Look, we've all been there. That initial dread of criticism, it's a completely universal human experience. Establishing that baseline is absolutely crucial because what we're exploring today is how you can actually step out of that dread. Imagine if that moment of critique wasn't just something you had to painfully survive, but a dynamic interaction you could actually master. Okay, let's dive into Section 1, the art of reception. There are literally thousands of courses and articles out there on how to give feedback, right? Like how to be gentle, how to use the classic compliment sandwich, or how to be a more constructive manager. But this module, it flips the lens entirely onto you, the receiver. The core focus here is handling feedback positively. And we're not talking about just gritting your teeth enduring a critique or pretending it doesn't sting. No, it outlines a highly active, totally learnable skill. The text specifically highlights that participants will learn how to reply to feedback in a way that literally changes negative feedback into a positive. It's all about taking the reins of the conversation simply through the power of your response. Which brings us to Section 2, transforming negative feedback. So when negative feedback comes our way, it naturally carries this heavy downward weight. It drags the energy down. But the challenging goal set out for participants here isn't to just smile and nod through the awkwardness. What's truly audacious about this module is the goal of shifting from negative to positive. The central thesis basically asserts that the ultimate objective is mastering your reply so thoroughly that it bridges this gap. It's this really profound idea that your response, the very words you choose and the exact way you deliver them, has the power to inherently change the polarity of the whole interaction. You are essentially taking the raw, potentially negative energy of a critique and synthesizing it into this awesome, constructive momentum for your own personal growth. So the crucial point is captured in this exact quote pulled directly from the text: to change negative feedback positively. I just want us to linger on that specific phrasing for a moment to really let the gravity of it sink in. The text doesn't say ignore the negative. Actually, it doesn't say defend against the negative either. It says to change it positively. The implications of this are just immense. It means you possess the transformative power to dictate the final outcome and the emotional resonance of a critique, completely regardless of how the person delivering it might have framed it in the first place. So how do we actually pull this off? Let's look at Section 3, cognitive versus behavioral strategies. To perform this kind of conversational alchemy, we need two distinct, heavily researched tools. First up, we have cognitive strategies. These represent the internal mechanics. For example, instead of getting defensive right off the bat, this might mean internally reframing the person's intent. You shift it from a personal attack to a genuine opportunity to improve. You manage your immediate mental and emotional reaction before you even speak. Then we have behavioral strategies. These are the external actions, what you actually do in the moment. This could be taking a deep breath to steady your nerves, physically uncrossing your arms so you appear more open, and actively asking clarifying questions to ensure you fully understand what they mean. Handling feedback positively requires the internal mental shift and the external physical response to be working together in perfect synchronized harmony. And that duality leads us perfectly into our final step, Section 4, mastering your reply. Let's move to and see how this builds into a beautifully clear, real-world flow. Step 1, receive feedback. This is the initial trigger. It's the exact moment the critique actually hits you. Step 2, apply strategies. Now this is that absolutely critical, strategic pause where you deploy your cognitive reframe to calm your ego while simultaneously using your behavioral tools to manage your posture and tone. And finally, Step 3, reply positively. Because you took that strategic pause back in Step 2, your final output in Step 3 is completely transformed. It comes out measured, it comes out constructive, and it comes out positive. The logical flow of the module proves that your reply is the very mechanism that executes the shift.
All right, let's summarize the core teachings being shared in this module, bringing all these source elements together into a cohesive recap. The absolute overarching mandate is to handle feedback positively. And to pull that off, you must utilize cognitive strategies to correctly frame your mindset, right alongside those behavioral strategies to control your physical and verbal actions. By synthesizing both of these internal and external domains, you master your reply. And it is through that carefully crafted reply that you successfully put yourself right back in the driver's seat, transforming negative feedback into a true constructive asset. Which brings us to a final provocative thought for today's explainer. How will your next behavioral reply change the narrative of a critique? Seriously, think deeply about that for a second. The next time you face criticism, remember that you are not just a passive target standing in the firing line. You have the cognitive and behavioral tools at your disposal to completely rewrite the ending of that interaction. I really hope this deep dive has given you a fresh perspective on the power you hold in these difficult conversations. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this text. Keep learning, keep practicing that positive transformation, and I will see you in the next explainer.